Hello, my cutie friends. Let's talk about the 23 books that I read in the month of January. It's my first wrap up of 2026. Oh my gosh. I have this organized in little categories. First, we need to look at my stats. Here they are. If you want to pause and read through them if you care about anything. The only thing I care about, what was my average rating of the month, which I don't put on here, but I give you a cutesy little flower to look at. It was a 3.8, and that is explained easily by the stats where you can see my 4-star stack is so big. It's huge. And if I can keep up that momentum for the entire year, imagine how powerful I could become. A 3.8 just feels delightful. Even though I only had 2 5-stars, I had so many 4s and a couple 4.5s. And I'll go through the ratings of everything here that I've already shown you in videos. And then there's 5 at the end that I haven't reviewed. We'll do that. And then at the end, there's a list of superlatives. Something I'm also really happy with the stats is where the books came from. Almost exactly a third of them were brand new releases that I bought that I was excited about. A third were from my already existing TBR. My already existing TBR were making a dent. And then a third was from the library, supporting the local library. Like, this is just the perfect little pie. And obviously, starting a series where I'm trying to read 26 books from my TBR closet, one for each letter of the alphabet, that's going to help me get through my TBR. But also I'm just picking things off of my shelves. And last year I had 40 something books off of my TBR that I had read. And what I consider a TBR book is something that was on my TBR before the beginning of the year. Or by the end of the year, I start counting it as like something that's been on my TBR shelf for like over 6 months. But if I keep up this momentum, last year was 40, year before was probably 40, I could double that by the end of 2026. I read mostly fantasy and science fiction, a good amount of horror, mystery, a little bit of romance, a little bit historical, a little bit of fiction, 1 nonfiction, and so many authors that were new to me that I'd never read from before. And those were some of my biggest wins. So hell yeah. Now here's how I organized it. For some reason, because I like to go through all of the books and the ratings that I gave, and everything I'm about to mention, the ones I quickly go through, there is a vlog, and I'll link all of them down below where you can see my full review, because I really yapped about all of these books already this month. This first amount is all books that I own and I gave high ratings, so I will be keeping, and they'll be moving onto my red shelf as things I will proudly display that I enjoyed. This stack includes the 5-star Exiles by Mason Coyle, the 4-star Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop by thrum, translated by Shanna Tan, the other 5-star Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. This one, When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly, got 4 stars. A Sinister Revenge by Deanna Raybourn, of course, got 4 stars. Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, 4 stars. 4.5 stars to Candelaria by Melissa Lozado Oliva, and 4 stars to the controversial You Again by Kate Goldbeck. The next chunk is 4 books that I got from the library and I rated 4 stars or above, and so they're now on my list of books I need to buy. Those 4 include Any Trope But You by Victoria Levine, which I gave a 4. The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley, 4 stars. The Bombshell by Darrow Farr, that got 4 stars. And Notes on Infinity by Austin Taylor, which got 4.5. Then I have the chunk that I will be unhauling at the end of the year. Once I'm done all of my reviews, my quarterly wrap-ups, my end of the year wrap-up, these will be leaving my possession. This includes Defekt by Nino Cipri, which I gave a 3.75, I think. Breathe and Bleed Out by Brian McCulley, which I gave a 2.5. Aftertaste by Daria Lavelle, which I gave a 3. I guess I'll just give this back to my mom because we kind of co-own it. And then A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft, which I gave a 3. Then 2 here that I borrowed from the library and I will be giving back and never thinking about again. Well, until I have to do my least favorites of the year, which I think Cross My Heart by Megan Collins would fall into, which was a 2.5. And then Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood, which I gave a 3. And finally, the 5 books that I haven't spoken to you about yet. Here's all 5 of them. Here we have On Sunday She Picked Flowers, Through Gates of Garnet and Gold, Thrum, Mutual Aid, and Murder in the Family. I'm going to save the best for last. I picked up Through Gates of Garnet and Gold by Shauna Maguire because this is the 11th book in the Wayward Children series. I read a book in the series, the latest book in the series, every January. Only 1 book in this series I have given under a 4-star. Everything has been 4 or 5 except for the Horse Girl book until now. This one was a 3.5, so I liked it just a little bit less than almost everything in the series. I have never felt this way before about a book in this series, but I wish that this was a full-length novel. I think it took on a little too much. And when you're introducing all of these ideas and like defeating a kind of villainous character in just 100 pages. It's not exactly what I wanted from the series at this point in the series. I'm not going to bother explaining what the whole series is about, because if you know, you know. If you don't know, you've probably skipped. Like, this is the 11th book in the series. But we are back to visiting characters who we all know and love, especially Nancy from the first book. We're revisiting her and a quest and kind of closure for her in the halls of the dead. We're hanging out with Christopher, we're hanging out with Cade, and a couple other characters who, if you've only read the first couple books in the series, I wouldn't want to spoil for you that are still here or not here. The quest is fun, there being a villain to take down is fun, but it just felt like a book to close out Nancy's story. And like, that's a good enough reason, but I just feel like with this much of a kind of nothing book at the same time, it should have happened earlier in the series. What I really think about this book is I'm assuming, I'm feeling a vibe that Shauna Maguire was writing this at the same time as she was writing the next like Alchemical Journeys book, maybe Inkpot Gods, maybe the one before, because so much of that vibe and even the dialogue between characters, especially like a villainous character, felt so much like the characters from that series, that the tone was just a little bit different, and not, like I said, everything that I wanted, but I still love hanging out with these characters, and I like following Nancy's story, and I like being in the halls of the dead. And this series always balances whimsy and darkness so well. I just want a little bit more fun and whimsy, but we do have some characters who bring that to the story. So like, it's a good book still. I think this should have been like 300 pages. Thrum by Meg Smitherman. I was really excited to pick up because you saw I read a good amount of sci-fi this month. I felt like I was really getting into my groove with sci-fi, and I had heard rumblings that this one was a little salacious, a little explicit, a little like pushing what people were expecting of it. And so I picked it up thinking it was going to be very much for me, and kind of a mix of what I was already picking up this month, and then also a little bit of maybe spread me. But instead it felt very half-baked. I want to give it a 3-star for still respecting and appreciating like the way it was written and the concept, but it felt like one of those novellas where the author has an idea and they want to, like, they know the explanation, they know the ending, but they don't really know how to get us there in an exciting way. So it just got really repetitive. And when it's a 120-page book, repetitiveness is something you really do not expect. Like, there was 60 pages of really good concept, really good character work, plot construction, and then 60 pages of the same stuff we already got just over and over again, because this should have been more like a novelette or part of a short story collection, because it did not need to be this long. We're following Amy. She's in space. She is the last known survivor of her ship, and she is essentially gonna die. Like, she's alone, she doesn't know what to do, and she gets discovered by this alien ship and brought on board by this alien man, and he has the ability to kind of present to her whatever is going to give her the most comfort. So what she's seeing isn't his actual form, it's what makes her feel safe and comfortable. And so obviously he's like totally hot and so her type, and so she's just very attracted to this alien man, and that's the whole story. Though it's certainly about their dynamic, it's not like a fun kind of romance. It definitely has a melancholy, heavy tone to it. There's her reeling from losing her crewmates. There's her trying to figure out if she's losing her mind, her trying to navigate the ship. And it obviously has like the high stakes of any space story, which is what I liked about it. I liked the concept. I liked her being in her mind and just trying to figure out what was going on and how she felt and how she knew that what she was seeing wasn't real, and is she being manipulated, or like what's really going on. The bones of this were really good. I just don't think it stuck the landing, but I would still probably recommend it. Another 3-star for me, which is kind of surprising, was On Sundays She Picked Flowers by Yaya Schofield. So these are 2 more books that are going in that pile of ones that I'll probably get rid of at the end of the year. I really enjoyed the writing of this one. It just wasn't my kind of book in the end as far as tone, and there were two specific tropes that I actually really don't like that this book fell into. I don't want to give away what those would be, but we're following Jude as she flees her abusive childhood home. Not before making, though, a permanent decision that will follow her throughout the rest of the years that we follow her. She finds this old building where she could find safety, and she makes friends with the ghosts and the haints that are there. And she has to deal with her extended family who is trying to hold on to what has been lost. I thought that this would be primarily a very gothic, vibey, nature-based horror, and rather it got a lot more violent and graphic and an exploration of trauma, more so than I expected. But it was very vibey, like it felt like a fever dream for a lot of it, which sometimes is my favorite, sometimes I hate it. There is certainly this overarching theme of perseverance and hope, but also a lot of trauma to unpack. I think if you loved both The Lamb and The Woods All Black, I think that this one could really work for you, tonally. It is wonderfully queer. There's a relationship, there's healing, there's plenty of her journey to root for, but there's also some really nasty stuff. And I think that that could be so many people's perfect balance. So not to spoil an upcoming question at the end of what I would recommend the most, but I think that of the books that I didn't love, the one that I would recommend the most is this one. Then we've got Mutual Aid by Dean Spade. This is building solidarity through this crisis and the next. I think this is the perfect book for so many people who loosely know what mutual aids are enough that they know they want to participate, because the first half is explaining what a mutual aid is, how it functions, how it's different than like a government assistance or charities, how it's about people helping each other, putting in the work, becoming a collective. But the second half is very much like how to successfully participate and engage in mutual aid work. So if you know absolutely nothing about mutual aid, I imagine the first half would be really informative, but the second half you'd just be like, okay, like I wasn't planning to like start this whole endeavor all of a sudden, but perhaps the first half could inspire you to do so. So I don't know. One thing I want to say is the construction of this is fantastic. Because in most books, I am not even using a highlighter in here. I'm using a pen or a marker that I like to use as a highlighter, but technically isn't a highlighter. And you can't even see through it. Like, these pages are thick. This book is intended to be highlighted. I originally got this as a free audiobook from Libro FM, and then as I was listening, I was like, no, I have to have the book in front of me. Like, it's a good listen, but I definitely needed to highlight all of the things that it was saying, because I just like to do that with my nonfiction, I guess. Did I highlight anything that I would want to tell you? I think it's just the idea that charity programs especially are really misunderstood with how they actually function and who they actually benefit. And when you are participating or you're supporting a charity, I don't want to demonize charities in any way, but there are so many charities that are not serving the people that it needs to, and it's more so serving the people who are donating and to feel good about donating. And it's so much focused on that and not about the people who are the most vulnerable, because so many charities make you prove your neediness, or prove that even though you're needy, you're perfect in like every element of life, and therefore you are deserved of charity. When there are so many people, it's kind of like the conversation about homelessness and being unhoused, and so many people are like, any of us could become unhoused. Like, it's so easy to, this isn't a part of the book, but it just made me think about that conversation, because you see so many people talking about how like we could all, you know, lose our jobs tomorrow and become unhoused. I think that has such good intent behind it, and it's so true, and it's to make people who otherwise wouldn't have felt empathetic towards homeless people to feel compassion. However, I think it also takes away the responsibility of social programs and things existing that people who are chronically homeless do need and are going to need potentially for the rest of their lives. There are many people, myself included, who, if I lost all of my streams of income and I lost my house, lost my vehicle, sold everything, there would be steps very clearly laid in front of me for how to get out of that. And even if it took a long time and it wasn't easy, I could still mentally and physically continue to try things. And there are places that I could go that would easily help me, people who would easily come to my aid. But there are people who are mentally ill. There are people who are disabled in ways that it's not just, oh, we'll help you find a job tomorrow and everything will be fixed for you. And when we remove those people from the conversation, the people who are the most vulnerable, then when we pretend everybody can fit in this pretty little box of what homelessness looks like, and we place blame and we place stigma, we're ignoring an entire group of people. And so with mutual aid, the idea is that everybody deserves help. It's not just for the innocent. It's not just for the nonviolent. It's not just for people who've never gotten in trouble with the law. Mutual aid doesn't have one person at the helm who is telling everybody what to do. And this book encourages you to be an active participant and supports the idea that all of the programs that you might have already participated in or heard of, they make it easy for you to come up with an excuse like, well, I can't be as active a participant because I'm not an expertise in anything. We need social workers, we need licensed therapists, we need lawyers, we need a person with an advanced degree to get things done. But mutual aid is more like everybody can do something. Everybody has something to do and something to say, and let's work together in smaller groups because that's going to be the most beneficial for society in general. So I wouldn't say that this taught me anything new, but I think it gives language to conversations that you probably would want to have, at least the first half that's teaching you about that. And the second half is very much like, here's how you, I don't know, take notes or handle money or communicate with people when there isn't one leader and we're all used to existing in spaces where there's a dominant figure and you feel like you can listen to someone else. It's like, no, we all have a responsibility, and as a collective, here's how we make decisions together. I think a lot of people could benefit from this. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know if I said that. I think it's a really good entry point. And then lastly, this was another 4-star, but because it's a mystery and I haven't given out a 4-star to a mystery, like that's not my most often rating for mysteries in the past 2 years has been a 2 or a 3. So this just felt like a joyous kind of moment, and it was so fun to read. It was so fast. I listened to the audiobook and I was doing a tandem read because there's all of these like newspaper scraps and various things to look at, but I found myself just so sucked into the audiobook that I marked it as an exclusive audiobook listen because I wasn't really reading, I was just kind of looking. This is Murder in the Family by Kara Hunter. And this is something that I've had in my TBR closet for maybe a year. And I was considering it as a good backlist for the Literally Dead book club, but I wasn't sure if it would be a great book club read. So I started it. I actually also pulled it out of my members TBR jar for the season just a couple weeks ago. And I was like, okay, great. I'll read the first couple chapters. I'll decide if it's going to be a book club pick, and then I'll read it perhaps in like March or something with you guys. And I started it and I was like, I don't know. And I just kept reading, I guess, just kept reading and thinking like, should I stop? Should I make this a book club pick? And by the end, I'm really glad that I didn't. Not because I don't think people would like this. I do think most people will like this, but because I don't think there's that much room for conversation. A talented book club host for sure could find things to talk about, but it's the kind of book where things are just presented to you and you're led in direction after direction until you get to the answer. And because it's mostly told in like transcripts and emails, I just, in the same way that a Janice Hallett, I don't know would make a great book club discussion because there's not much to really dig into because everything is laid out to you so clearly. It's not like you're really getting internal monologue, not really getting anything about the characters and their memories. It's just facts on the page. But I found it so engaging and so interesting because it is about a documentary, a true crime documentary that's being made. And we're following the transcript, or, oh my God, what is the word? Like we're following what we're seeing on the show as if we are watching the show. Like not just with dialogue, but with explanations. So like the camera pans over to a photograph of a house. It fades into the current footage of the detective standing outside and fades back into the old photograph. We see this, this, and this on screen. A voice fades in. And then also in the audiobook, I don't think I've ever heard this before. It was like fading in and out of different news stories. And that was really fun. But then also, we're not just getting the transcript. It cuts and then we're getting the actual people who are talking about what they just filmed and arguing and disagreeing and discussing what they just talked about and what they're going to film next. The plot involves this man who died, how many years ago was it? 20 years ago, a man died, and we don't know who killed him or what they killed him with. So we get the classic, like, we have to figure out, was it Mrs. Whatever in this room with the knife? The son of this man, he was a young boy when it happened, and he has, you know, step siblings, biological siblings, parents, step parents. Like, there's all of these family dynamics being explored throughout the series, but we're mostly focused in on the group of people that our main character, Guy, he's a filmmaker who's making this documentary, has brought together, who he thinks could fit the pieces together of who killed his dad. There's detectives who know about the case, detectives who don't know about the case, private investigators. There's various people who he thinks is a good group to bring together to be on camera and to give good interviews and to like find out the truth. So every couple days, the production team and Guy are like bringing information to the group. Some things that have already been explored 20 years ago, some things that were left uncovered. And of course, there's been changes in technology, so they can take the same evidence and like re-examine it in a different way. And I just thought it was so fun. It was so engaging. It was so interesting. It was really easy to follow. It was one of those ones that I saw in 2023 that was talked about a lot and marketed as like a follow along, can you solve the crime before they do kind of thing. And all of the clues are definitely laid out for you, but at strategic points. There are of course some reveals. I gave it a 4 and not any higher because why? I think there could have been a little bit more stuff to make me care about individual characters. And then also the ending, while I like the ending, I think it was doing a little bit too much. It was thorough, it was interesting, would definitely read more from this author. And that's the 5 books that I read that I needed to review. Quickly, we'll run through these little categories. Favorite book of the month. I actually don't know. The longer I go since reading Exiles, I think this is the favorite. But I think more objectively, can there be objectivity when it's a favorite? I don't know. This feels like the right answer, but passion-wise, I think it's Exiles. But actually, you know what I think it is? I think it's my fear of overhyping this one because I know that there are people who hate it. Although I know there are people who hate this one. I think this is definitely more palatable. And this one, I fear overselling because it's not necessarily super weird and crazy. And I think because of my reactions in the vlog, it could come across that way. But it's just more, oh, that's what we're doing, okay. It's harder to pitch and explain why I loved it. This one I find easy. Least favorite of the month. I gave these two the same rating, but these are not even in my mind at all. I don't think there's actually anything wrong with Cross My Heart. I just didn't love it. I think Breathe In, Bleed Out is like just not a very good book, but also not worthy of anything less than a 2.5. Most disappointing is gonna be Cross My Heart because it's a mystery, a thriller, and I always hype those up because I'm just trying to find good ones and it's very hard. Biggest surprise is definitely Notes on Infinity because I had never even heard about this until the video concept that I chose it for. And because of the people who hate it and the low average rating and the passion people have for how bad it is, I just didn't know if it would be for me. And it was very much for me. Best audiobook, easy. Just told you, it was Murder in the Family. Very, very engaging read, lots of narrators. Author I want to read more from. Sadly, this author has passed, but he does have one more under this name, Mason Coyle, William, that I would really like to get to. My number one recommendation, I think horror readers, gothic readers should definitely read On Sunday She Picked Flowers. I think the general public, just like my mom said when she recommended it to me and recommended it to all of you, I think Aftertaste is a really commercial, palatable pick. But then of course, I'm not gonna pass up an opportunity to recommend a nonfiction that I think would be informative to a lot of people. Favorite character, guess what? We once again have a Veronica Speedwell book in the running, so it has to be Veronica and Stoker. Favorite cover, okay. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna put it on the screen so you can see it in all its glory. I'm gonna say You Again, just because I really love the style. I love the colors. The fall vibes are so beautiful. But then I also wanna say Exiles, because I think it perfectly, I just love covers like this. The fogginess of space, I think it's really fun. But also Candelaria, just because it's perfectly weird. And I quite like this tone of blue as the background. I just think it really suits it, and I don't see this color a lot on book covers. I wouldn't paint my house that color, but I love it for the book. And then also the Ministry of Time. I really like it. I like books that are mostly the title. I love the colors. I think it's just kind of a good graphic style. And then my favorite title is also Exiles, because it's just perfectly exudes a couple different themes in the book. But also Aftertaste, because it's already a word on its own, like an aftertaste, but considering it has to do with the afterlife and it's about someone tasting food and being able to connect with the dead, like, I like a book that's a little referential, a little punny, or an idiom or something. And that is it for me today. Thank you so much for watching my wrap up, and let me know what you think of anything. The books that we disagree on, the books that I have convinced you to read, convinced you not to read, whatever you want to tell me down below. I would love to hear it.